Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunjari Hari Jaya Kunjari Hari Jaya Koti Charavana Jaya Girivardhari Charavana Jaya Girivardhari Yashodanandana Raja Janarajana Yashodanandana Janarajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunjali Hari 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 Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajavacharya Ashtapadasata Shishmad Samandai Saboicharya Aruna Bhaktivedanta Swami ISKCON Samstapakacharya EBT Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shamadeva Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, Creation, chapter 8, entitled Prayers by Queen Kunti, and I believe we're on text 10. We're on 11? Did I not move it forward after yesterday's class? Okay, text 11. Okay, however, conquest. One should first of all offer respectful obeisance unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto the Goddess of Learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto the author, Srila Vyasadeva. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devam saraswatam vyasam tato jayo udiraye Shrinvata Swatata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanam Vedyantostiya Bhadrani Viduno Sadam. Krishna was the super soul, Paramatma, in the heart of the living entities, and the benefactor of the truthful devotees, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, who has developed an urge to hear his message, or messages which in themselves are virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Preshu Avadareshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavitirtamashloke Bhakti Naishtiki. By regular hearing and attending classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes completely destroyed, almost to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord who is glorified with transcendental prayers is established as an irrevocable effect. Krishna Svadamo Padate Dharma Gyana Kadisaha Visham Vishamesha Puranako Lolita. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana, is as brilliant as the sun, and has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So, text 11, 8th chapter, 1st canto. Please repeat. Sutta Uvacha Adarya Vachashtasya Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalah Apandavam Midam Kartum Jomer Astram Abhudyata Sutta Uvacha Paraya Vachastasya Bhagavan Bhagavatsalaha Apadavam Midam Kartum Harnir Astram Abhudyata Sutta Uvacha Adarya Vachastasya Bhagavan Bhagavatsalaha Apandavam Midam Kartum Shaunir Astram Abhudyata Sita Uvacha Adarya Vachastasya Bhagavan Bhagavatsalaha Apandavam Midam Kartum Shaunir Astram Abhudyata Sutta Uvacha Adarya Vachastasya Bhagavan Bhagavatsalaha Apandavam Midam Kartum Shaunir Astram Abhudyata Sri Radhika.
Yes. Sijatuvacha Upadharya Vajastasya Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalah Apandava idam kartum dranirashram adbhutyata.
Sutta Uvacha Upadharya Vatastasya Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalaha Apandavam Idam Kartum Dauner Astram Abhyudaita.
Anyone else on Sutta Uvacha? Sutta Goswami said, Adarya, by hearing her patiently, Vachaha, words, Tasyaha, her, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Bhaktavatsalaha, he who is very much affectionate towards his devotees, Apandavam, without the existence of the Pandavas, descendants. I'll read the translation on that word again. I'll do that one again. Apandavam, without the existence of the Pandavas' descendants. Idam, this. Kartum, to do it. Drane, the son of Dronacharya. Astram, weapon. Abhudyata, understood. Translation and purport by His Sutta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who was always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family. Please repeat. Sutta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who was always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family. The purport. The Lord is impartial in every respect, but still he is inclined towards his devotees, because there is a great necessity of this for everyone's well-being. The Pandavas' family was a family of devotees, and therefore the Lord wanted them to rule the world. That was the reason he vanquished the rule of the company of Duryodhana and established the rule of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Therefore, he also wanted to protect Maharaj Pariksit, who was lying in embryo. He did not like the idea that the world should be without the Pandavas, the ideal family of devotees. Om Jnana Timananda Shachinandjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitanjana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My eyes are being opened by the torch of knowledge. Due to the mercy of my spiritual master, I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master and unto all Vaishnava devotees of the world. They are just like the desire tree, and all Vaishnava gurus. Shirupam Sadhujatam Sadhanam Raghunatam Vikam Tam Sajiva. Offer my obeisances unto Rupa Goswami, his older brother Sanatana, and unto the others, including Raghunath Das and Jiva Goswami. Offer my obeisances unto Advaita Acharya, Yavaduta Nityananda, and to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I offer my obeisances unto Radha and Krishna, and the gopis headed by Lalita and Vishaka. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter as well as feet in this world. My obeisances unto you, O servant of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You are kindly spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu throughout the Western worlds, which is filled with voidism and impersonalism. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the devotees, those who are present here in the temple room, those who are present on Zoom, and those who are present in sound, all the great acharyas and disciples in session, coming from Lord Brahma, all the way down to Madhvacharya, to Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the six Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srinivas, Naraham, and Shankun. Offer my obeisances unto Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and unto Baladev Vishbhushan. Srila Prabhupada had commented and offered his Bhagavad Gita purports in honor of Baladev Vishbhushan. Unto Jagannath Das Babaji Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Kishore Das Babaji Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, and President Acharyas. Offer my respectful obeisances again and again unto Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, unto Lord Nityananda, Kedadhar, Shivas, Advaita Acharyas, Kedadhar, Shivas, and all those in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation and purport again. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 8, text 11. Sutta Uvacha Ardaya Vachastasya Bhagavan Salaha Apandavam Idam Kartum Yoner Astra. Suta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who was always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family. So, just to bring up to where we are, after the battle of Kurukshetra, what did Ashvatthama, who was the son of Dronacharya. Dronacharya is the martial guru of all the young princes, the Pandavas, the Kauravas, Duryodhana, Bhima, Yudhisthira, Arjuna, and Dronacharya's son was Ashvatthama. Ashvatthama also was trained as his father. Dronacharya would be considered a Brahmana Kshatriya. Brahmana's teaching martial arts. Highly elevated, highly respected. There was Bhishma, who actually requested Dronacharya, if I recall, to teach all the young princes, all the princes in the military arts. And they became very proficient. Especially Arjuna, when it came to the bow, was very, very proficient. And then later, as the young princes, as they grew, there became a rift in the family. It's said that in Satya Yuga, there's conflict, and the conflict, basically it's between demoniac and divine character. And the word demoniac is a very powerful, it's a strong term. Demoniac, when you really analyze it, basically means atheist and theist. Somebody who's a devotee and somebody who's not a devotee. So the term demon is referred to non-devotees. There's always a conflict between the devotees and the non-devotees. So formerly, the conflict took place in different planets. Right? The demigods were on some planets and the demons were on other planets. That should help me speak better. Thank you. So the conflicts were on different planets. The enemies were on different planets. Such in Satya Yuga, they were in different countries. Ravana was Lanka, Ram was Ayodhya. And it was like, and in Dwarka Yuga, they're in the same family. And this is, Dwarka Yuga, the end of Dwarka Yuga. This is still Dwarka Yuga. Krishna and the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the cousins, are in the same family. And it said that in Kali Yuga, the divine and demoniac are within the same person. So on one side you got the angel saying, no, don't do that. And the devil says, yes, do that. Maybe you've seen animated cartoons. 1 minute, we're acting in a divine, thinking divinely, and another minute, and I'm speaking for myself, of course, but I'm not thinking so divinely, maybe not acting so divinely. That situation comes up, and sometimes gut reaction takes over, and we may do something that's a bit out of character for a divine person. So within But so the point is that this rift between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they're actually cousins. They grew up. There was envy. The envy was mostly coming from the Kauravas. Duryodhana, who thought he was privileged. His family thought he should have been the emperor. And in actuality, Yudhisthira, the eldest of the five Pandavas, was rightly the heir to the empire, not just the king, but the whole empire. And the whole empire consisted of the entire universe, well, the entire planet, not just what we know now. Bharatvarsh, the former name of India was called Bharatvarsh, but actually the whole planet was called Bharatvarsh at one time, and it was one culture. It was Vedic culture. But due to the course of time from separation, different cultures develop. But there are certain principles in all cultures that indicate a commonality of all cultures. For instance, the concept of marriage that's there in all cultures. Of course, as Kali Yuga progresses, the institution of marriage becomes weaker, perhaps comes non-existent. But even in the most aboriginal cultures, there's some form of wedding and some form of rules and regulations. In all cultures, there's a caste system. The European caste system is called the feudal system, and in India it's called the caste system, or more correct, the varnashram system. And there's orders, social and spiritual orders in all cultures. Even the indigenous communities in North America, they have the same caste. They have their chief, they have their warriors, they have their, and European, they have the serfs, the vassals, and the different, the lords and the kings. It's like, so and it's there within every culture. So there's a commonality. So one time, the Vedic culture was global, but when you disconnect or you distance yourself from the pure culture, then speculation and things become watered down to the point where it goes in a different direction. And as Kali Yuga progresses, things become so watered down when it comes to the concept of God consciousness or religiosity, practically becomes non-existent. And so 5,000 years ago, when Krishna departed, as that verse we quoted, along with him went knowledge, religion, etc. So the quality of culture and so on and so forth diminishes. But ultimately, it's mentioned in this verse purport that Krishna wanted Yudhisthira to be the emperor of the planet, because to have a godly person as the emperor, as opposed to an ungodly person, is beneficial. It's beneficial for everyone. It's beneficial for the planet. It's beneficial for each and every living entity. And therefore, this whole battle of Kurukshetra took place primarily to establish Yudhisthira on the throne as the emperor. Now, after the battle, Ashvatthama, he thought he would do something that would be pleasing to Duryodhana. Duryodhana was the principal son of the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra. So he was the principal Kaurava. Actually, the Pandavas and Kauravas, they were all Kauravas, because they're all coming from the same, Bhishma, Dhritarashtra, and Pandava. They were brothers. So these are cousins, direct cousins. The concept of cousins having conflicts with each other, it's rivalry. When you're kids, there's some sibling rivalry. But when, I'm talking about my own experiences. But as you get older, it's like those rivalries are no longer there. There's actually respect and appreciation, in my experience. But we often see that there's sibling rivalry in a very strong rivalries. They don't speak to each other. Sometimes it has to do with extended family. The brother has a wife, the sister has a husband, and the wife and the husband, they influence, and so they cause some rift with the family. Or sometimes it's just out of envy, jealousy. Perhaps the parental guidance wasn't balanced, and therefore there was some conflict between the different family members, the siblings. So conflicts are sometimes there. And in the case of the Pandavas, and now we call them Kauravas, there was certainly these conflicts, and mostly based on the envy. Especially Duryodhana was always envious of the Pandavas, very envious of especially Bhima. So much so that, plots for murder. It's such an intriguing thing, plots for murder. The godly souls, they never considered plotting for murder. But the others who are ungodly, murder is not a problem. In today's society, we see the same. It's like people take somebody else's life because there's no regard for life, because life is not something special. Whether that life is taking, another innocent animal to feed your palate, or whether to take another human's life. There's no sense of remorse. There's no sense of ramifications. It's just people are, because they're completely ungodly. They have no sense of understanding that the body is not the person, but there's a spirit soul, and that there's a supreme God. And the farther we get away from that, the more degraded society becomes. So this is the reason that Lord Krishna, he wanted to keep the Pandavas on the throne. He wanted to keep Yudhisthira as the head of the Pandavas, who was known as Dharmaraj, was very appropriate, making the right decisions based on godly principles. And plus, the Pandavas were all devotees of Krishna. They're not just related as cousins, but of course, from time to time, we understand that they don't realize it, because we learn that from Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna is instructing Arjuna, Arjuna is, was a little bit surprised after being instructed by Krishna. He realized that, even though, Vyasadeva is saying it, Narmuni is saying it, he says, I read the Bhagavad Gita. Then he said, you are the Supreme Brahman, you are the Supreme Abode, you are the Absolute, you are the Supreme Person. Now I'm a surrendered soul unto you. I'm a little bit shaken, I'm a little bit embarrassed that I treated you just like a friend, like an equal. We would sit on the same bedstead, but now I realize you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even the Pandavas were not always aware that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We know prior, when they were going to perform the Ashvamedha sacrifice for Yudhisthira, a person had to be selected. I mentioned this, I think, the last time. A person had to be selected as as a worshipable person. And the Sahadev, Pavanakula or Sahadev, the younger Pandavas, suggested Krishna. And others objected. Those who were not devotees, they completely objected. And others who were more devotional, they totally agreed. Of course, those who objected, especially the ruler, the head of the one who objected, was beheaded. So much for being a head. He was just a head, and the head was separated from the body, so there's no life. Because they don't have a concept. And Manushanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Itari Sile. Out of thousands, one may endeavor to try to understand what is God. But hardly one knows in actuality. Most people are inclined towards material gain. Sometimes they'll go to a church, a temple, a mosque, and their objective is material gain. And if they get material gain without having to go to a temple, a church, or a mosque, then they won't bother, because their main objective is material gain. Why? Material gain leads to sense gratification. Dharma, karma, artha, moksha. Dharma, you perform some duty, your duty, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, work, then you get artha, then you get some reward, you get your paycheck. And then with that paycheck, then the more paycheck you have, the more sense gratification you have. The more wealth you have, the more sense gratification you have. And sense gratification can be very subtle. The more money you have, money is power. Money is power, so the more money you have power, that's sense gratification. Now I'm a controller. I'm a really big controller because I have so much money. Now I'm God. They say this is the last snare of Maya's illusion, thinking that you are the controller, that you're God, you're actually God. This is the last snare. Srila Prabhupada mentions this in the first canto, second chapter. I don't know exactly the exact verse, but he mentions it. He mentions it in another place. The last snare of Maya's illusion is to think now you're God. So the more artha, then the more illusion we can have, because we're thinking that this is mine, this is my wealth, and I yield the power with this. But a devotee, on the other hand, will accept all wealth, everything, but recognize that it belongs to Krishna and use it in his service. And he sees himself and others, Vidyavanaya Sampane, right? The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees equally. Brahmani, Hastini, Swapatecha. He sees equally the Brahmana, the elephant, the dog, he sees them all equally. Saintly person sees everyone equally, and therefore he shares equally. Now, we're not talking material communism, but we're talking spiritual communism, in that everything belongs to Krishna. Every living entity is Krishna's servant or devotee or son or daughter, regardless of what species they may be in, and everyone should be given the same equal rights according to their needs, as it says in the Ishupanishad. What's the verse? First verse of Ishupanishad, not the invitation. Anyone give me a start? Ishavasha idam sarvam yet jagat. I don't even remember even after the first one. Everyone is entitled to their quota, but one should not encroach upon another's quota, knowing for whom it well belongs. So what is our quota? In the purport, if I recall in that particular verse, Ishupanishad, text 1, Srila Prabhupada actually talks about food. And he says for the human being, vegetarian is the quota for a human being, and therefore others. And even better than vegetarian, of course, is recognizing everything is Krishna's, and therefore we offer everything to Krishna, even whatever we eat. Yet karoshi, yashinashi, dashtidoshi, dadashi, whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, do that, Krishna says, as an offering to me. That's the devotee. Whereas a non-devotee, he's thinking, all that I have, all that I survey is mine, I will get more, and I will become powerful, and I will kill my enemy. I will give a little donation here and there, mostly for recognition of, but this is actually the mentality of a non-devotee, because you think you're the doer, you're the controller, and then the more you control, the more power you have, the more important you are. But for a devotee, the more influence he has, the less he feels he's a controller, which is kind of interesting because they have more control, more power, but they think themselves less because they recognize that all the control, all the power is coming from the Supreme Personality of God and from Krishna. So we bring us back to today's verse with Ashvatthama. He had released the Brahmastra weapon. He wanted to make sure that there's no heir on the Pandava line to the throne, and the last heir was in the womb of Uttara. Uttara was the daughter-in-law of Arjuna. Abhimanyu was Arjuna's son, and before the battle, Kurukshetra, Abhimanyu and Uttara was going to give birth to their son. But Abhimanyu was killed on the battlefield. So all the Pandavas, and before that, the five other sons of the Pandavas were killed by the same Ashvatthama. And now, the only one left possibility at this time was the child Pariksit in the womb of Uttara. And so Ashvatthama wanted to make sure that that would be the last one, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if the other sons of the Pandavas had wives, but Pariksit was the last. He was the next one to come forward. And it's interesting that Pariksit, Yudhisthira was concerned, well, curious, I think is a better word, curious to know the character of the soul within the womb. And interesting enough, the main person that he inquired from was Kripacharya, because Kripacharya was very learned, very knowledgeable. He could actually, he was Chikaligya, and he could actually determine the character of the soul within the womb. But Kripacharya was one of the enemies to the Pandavas during the battle of Kurukshetra. Now, I'm not sure the timeline, or whether, from what I recall, he did approach Kripacharya after the battle of Kurukshetra, but and to inquire about the soul within the womb, or maybe it was before. But in any case, they turned out to be on opposite sides, either before or after Kripacharya expressed the. But it's interesting that Yudhisthira went to Kripacharya, and what he heard about the character of Pariksit. There's a whole section in the Srimad Bhagavatam later will come to describing, the exalted character of Maharaj Pariksit. He's going to be as good as such and such demigod. He's going to be as good as such and such. He's going to be, greater than, and like his character. Of course, Yudhisthira, hearing about this, was very, very pleased. So here was an ideal king. Krishna wanted the devotees on the throne. He wanted Yudhisthira on the throne. He wanted that dynasty to continue. And now that dynasty was being threatened by the Brahmastra going straight for the embryo of Uttara. And so now Uttara, out of Abhimana was very lucky. He married a devotee. He was a devotee. She's a devotee. Srila Prabhupada says in this regard, if you have a devotee and another devotee, if they're spiritually equal, then it makes for a good compatible relationship. But if one is non-devotee, one is a devotee, it makes for a very incompatible relationship. Or if one's a non-devotee and another's a non-devotee, it makes for a compatible relationship. It's kind of interesting. Oh, okay, yeah, that is true. So Abhimana was very fortunate because within the womb, because Uttara was also a devotee, and because she was a devotee, when she was in desperation, she went and asked Krishna to protect the child in the womb. And of course, Krishna, he wants Yudhisthira on the throne. Actually, he wants the dynasty to continue, so he wants to protect the child in the womb, which is Pariksit. And that is what brings us to this verse. Sutta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, the words were a plea to protect the child in the womb, Lord Krishna, who is always affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family. And it's interesting, just one other point in the purport. It mentions that Krishna is equal to everyone. It's equal to everyone. But he favors his devotees. And the example that Srila Prabhupada would give, and I often would use, is in the court, the judge, he's equal to anyone. Everyone is completely equal. But according to the actions of the person who's in front of the judge, either they're rewarded or they're punished proportionately to their own actions. So Krishna is equally disposed to everyone, but according to one's own actions, they either become unfortunate or fortunate. But for the devotee, the judge, for his own son comes, he would be a little more lenient if the son was to be punished, or he may be a little more generous if the son was going to be rewarded. So in the same way, it's basic psychology, but in the same way, Krishna is more, affectionate. What's the word? Bhaktavatsala. He's affectionate to his devotees. Yes, yeah, nepotism, yeah. But Krishna he can get away with it. Okay.